Welcome back to another video, guys. Aaron here, Curls in the Rack, and on today's video, this is a video for everybody who is undecided on whether to get the short or the long trolley arms. You've decided that you actually want to get the trolley arms. You've decided that you want to pay that astronomical price, and you're thinking to yourself, more is always better, longer is better. I'll get the longer ones. I must be able to do more with them. Shorter arms, I'm going to get less for the same amount of money. Well, today's video, we're going to go through the ins and the outs of the short versus the long. And I had originally planned to do a video where I'm going to go do a side-by-side with every single movement, deadlift, bench, overhead press, push press, all those sort of things. But going through and researching this, I found that there's pretty much no exercise that the short ones can't do, that you'd be better off with the long ones. But I can tell you're still skeptical, so why don't you roll that footage? Guys, sorry I had to interrupt, but the reason that my right hand side hits the top is because I have this beam running out from the rack, so the clearance over here is not as much. So that's the only reason. If you have a regular rack and you don't have a beam that's coming off the right hand side like I do, then yours will be totally fine. As you saw, the left hand side worked a lot better. Now back to it. Okay, so the proof was in the pudding. You did see that I was able to accomplish all those lifts, and there's a bunch of other things that I want to talk about in this video, but I will say that one exercise, and this is only because I'm on the inside of the rack, was cutting it close for me. I'm 5'10", and as you can see, I could do the overhead press. It was fine. If you're taller though, and your range of motion and your arm is locked out, you may hit that top cross beam. So that's the only thing that I could say about getting the short ones versus the long ones. But you could also do the shorter trolley arms on the outside of the rack, and then you wouldn't have that issue. So I'm gonna go through the top reasons that I would recommend getting the shorter ones over the longer ones, and then you can ultimately make the decision for yourself on what you purchase. But first, here's a real quick tip. As you can see on my long ones, they're pretty scuffed and scraped. So on the short ones that I bought, and you can do this regardless if you get the long ones or the short ones, what I would recommend is before you throw these handles on here, you put some sort of backing on here. Now you can use, I used some leftover vinyl that I had from making the DIY seat, self-adhesive, but you can use felt. You can also use electrical tape if you have that, and throw those on all the points of contact that come with sliding this thing onto the arm. So that way you won't scratch it up, and it's just something to think about. Some people don't care about that, but I like to keep things as nice as possible. So, okay guys, final tip, and then I'll quit meddling. What you might want to do, and what I've done, and going to save yourself a lot of time, is I also, like I did on my rack, is I lettered these holes. So that way I know where my handle is going. And the reason I do this is because it's very hard to count them each time and then put the handle in and then count them. It's not hard to do that, but it just takes longer. If you can just visually look at a letter and be like H, other side H. Because a lot of times what I've done is I'll be like, put it in there, and then I put the other one over here on this side, and I'm like, oh crap, that didn't match up. This one hangs off here a little bit more. So do yourself a favor, guys. You're going to shave a lot of that transitioning time off your workout if you just get some stencils and a Sharpie, like a metallic Sharpie, whatever color you want, and just put the stencil up here and then pull it off. It took me like 20 minutes to do both these arms, and it's going to save you a lot of time in the future when you're working out. All right, guys. Reason number 1. The fact that if you have the spotter arms, the rubber makes contact with the top of the spotter arms. If you have the longer ones, the arm is going to come out way too far, and you're going to hit this piece of metal right here. You're going to have to put something underneath it. When I had them, I just put on these little bumpers here, so that way they would rest on there. But the fact that the shorter ones, you don't need that because you can actually use the rubber stopper that comes with it. So that's reason number 1. Reason number 2, options. If you get the smaller ones, you have the option to throw them inside the rack or outside the rack, depending on what your preference is. And who knows, things could change down the road. You reconfigure things. You might want to throw them inside, or things change. You got more stuff going on the inside. You'd rather have them on the outside. The longer ones, you're stuck to the outside, so you were forced to stay out there. Main reason that I went ahead and got the shorter ones. So that's reason number 2. Reason number 3, the fact that when you are done with these things, you can get them out of your way, and they're not going to get in the way of your other movements, from the simple fact that you can throw this all the way to the bottom, and as you can see, they rest on the bottom of the rack. So that way you have all your holes available. You want to do some squats, you want to do some overhead press, you want to do some bench press. They're completely out of your way and they don't get in the way. And as you can see, I can still roll my bench in here, right in the center. It kind of actually helps me line up the bench, the fact that the handles are here too. I can do my benching, I can do my anything I want with the bench in the middle of the rack. Now, if you have the longer ones, you have to be on the outside of the rack, and I found that when I was doing things on the outside of the rack, I constantly had to move these things up or down to get them out of my way. Because if they were up all the way, I couldn't throw my spotters on the outside. They wouldn't match up. The spotter would slide down and it would be over the rubber piece. So I would completely have to move it all the way down, and I'd have this big tripping hazard that was sitting out there in the middle of the mats. And I couldn't use that floor space at all because those things were in the way. So that's reason number 3. Reason number 4, loading the plates. I like to use these when I am doing either deadlifts or Romanian deadlifts, or any kind of a movement where I'm doing some floor up. And if you have the long ones, they're outside of the rack, and you actually have to pick up the arm to load the plates. But when they're resting on the cross member here, it's really easy to take a plate and just slide it on, because this part is not touching the floor. So it makes it a lot easier when you're transitioning, adding weight, and stuff like that. I will say, however, that when you have it on here on the cross member, the barbell where you're grabbing it on doing a deadlift is slightly higher than it would be if it was out there with either the short ones or the long ones. If you had them on the outside of the rack, would actually touch the floor, you would be able to get more range of motion. I took that into consideration when I decided to throw them on the middle of the rack here, but that's nothing to say about getting the long or the short arms, because if I move these outside of the rack, then I would be down to the floor, more at the range that you would pick up the bar on a traditional deadlift. Okay, and the final, and I think one of the biggest reasons, and it definitely made me want to go ahead and get the shorter ones so I could bring them inside of the rack, is the fact that you can utilize them with the slinger. Now, these are just Monster Light pin plate storage posts, which I put on here. You can totally use the handle that comes with them, but just know that all the weight's going to be on one side, so the heavier you go, you can have a little bit of torque this way. I wanted to even it up, so I used 2 of these on here, which are really easy to pop in. And the fact that I can actually get rid of this crap. I don't want to have to set this up all the time. I don't have to put this on here, put this through here, cable that to the bottom there, then strap it up here. I already have the arm in the middle of the rack at all times, so it saves me time when I actually want to use the slinger, load up my plates, and then go ahead. It works great. It works way better than the plate loaded setup that they sell you with the slinger. So if you have a slinger, this is also something to consider. You're going to get the trolley arms. Don't get the long ones because they're not going to go in here. Get the shorter ones. You can use a setup like this. All right, another thing that rocks on these things is the fact that if you have them on the inside of the rack, and let's say you're doing your shoulder day, you've done all your movements, the last thing you want to do is have to load up that bar again to do shrugs. It's the finishing move. You're just like, I'm done. Let's, I don't know. That's the shrug, right? I don't know. Anyways, so it's super easy to be able to just sit down on the bench, and the handles are at a perfect length to do shrugs. Right from the bench, take your plates off, and you're done. Well, there you guys have it. Another video done. Hopefully this was helpful. Hopefully if you were on the fence about not knowing which one to get, I gave you some sort of guidance. And if I forgot anything, please let me know in the comments section. I'm going to have more products coming in soon to review, so I'm excited about that. And if you like the video, consider subscribing. I got a ton of other stuff on here and a lot more to come. So till next time, peace.